Hello and welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. Today on the program we have Lance Keltner, who I had a chance to interview and talk to him about his start in music, his battle with COVID, his new album, which he has coming out in June as well, and so many other topics. So really looking forward to bringing Lance on the program here in just a bit. Before we do that, catch you up on what's going on in my world. I just got back a couple days ago from spring break, where I took the kids to Southern California, and we did a shit ton of fun stuff. I mean, to put it, mildly. I mean, I tried to live within my means a little bit, not do any of the theme park stuff, which is overly crazy and insane, and in my estimation, not necessary for what the experience I'm looking to bring for my kids, right? So didn't do too much of that, but gave them more experiences. That we were not lacking on any of the experiences on the trip. I'll say that, which was really cool. We started out the first 2 days in the LA area. The first stop was a location where I hadn't told the kids that we were going to, but my daughter recognized the place right away, which was super cool, and that is the Wonder Years house. So I grew up on the Wonder Years, and I mean, it was such a big part of my life, and I've brought it into my kids' life as well. So this is Kevin Arnold's house from the Wonder Years, and I'd been there once before, 20 something years ago, probably, when I was younger. But I was excited to get to go back, just to be there and feel, the part of Kevin Arnold's world, I guess. And right across the street was Winnie Cooper's house, and so we walked over there, and then around the corner was Winnie Cooper's second house, actually, which it's in the show they say it's 4 miles away, but it's actually just right around the corner. So we hopped over there in Burbank before heading to Los Angeles, and doing a lot of really fun things. We hung with my friend John Lally in Los Angeles as well for a bit. It was good to visit with some friends during the trip. We went to Pink's hot dogs for dinner, actually, which is notoriously famous place. And so many famous people have been there, and that was a cool experience because some good dogs, right? Is a lot of fun. So we did that, and what else did we do? We spent a couple of days. We were on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for a bit. We just happened over there because of where we were located. But the kids got to swim in a pool on the roof of the Godfrey Hotel, which is where we stayed, which was pretty cool. They had a lot of fun doing that. And then we worked our way down to San Diego, where we visited with my other buddy Jay and his family, who are from the Sacramento area, and just happened to be down there on their spring break trip. So we coordinated and spent a day together, hanging on the beach and by the pool, and that sort of thing. So in La Jolla, which was fun, and we spent the bulk of our trip in San Diego as well. We went to the Fleet Science Center, and we went to see Sonic 2, which my son was really excited about. And something else that we did for my son, which he did not know was coming up, was we went to what's it called? Oh man, I don't have the name in my calendar. I don't see it. But it was a car museum, and at this car museum, I found this out like just 2 days before the trip, maybe a day before the trip, even really close. I found it out that the actual Ecto-1 from the movie Ghostbusters, and the most recent Ghostbusters, was on display in this museum, as were a lot of other famous cars. There's an '89 Batmobile there. There's DeLorean there as well, which was really cool. So we got to walk around, see lots of really cool cars, cars from Bond movies, that sort of thing. And that was a lot of fun. My son really enjoyed that. He was blown away by getting to see the Ecto one, and it was something he wanted to do in LA actually, because a month prior I had been in LA to visit my friend John actually, and just driving down on the side over of the Hollywood Bowl was an Ecto one. I think it was a reproduction, but as part of a car show. But I had to pull over, take pictures, and send them to him. And then he had asked, "Do you think that the Ecto one will be there when we come down to LA?" And it was just the greatest question. And I had to break it to him and tell him, "No, no, I don't think so. I'm sorry, buddy." And the fact that he got to see it was really rewarding for me as a parent, because those are the things that he'll remember. He'll remember that stuff a lot more than seeing Mickey at Disneyland. So, stuff that he doesn't even really care about, right? I mean, I'm sure he'd have fun, but there's tens of thousands of other people there and at those theme parks, and it gets really crazy, and that's not really relaxing for me when I'm going on a trip. So I try and avoid it. And I was able to avoid it. Let me say. So, we went to the San Diego Air and Space Museum as well, which was pretty cool for the kids, and just hung around the area. And then the day before we were supposed to come back, yeah, I noticed that America's Got Talent was taping in Pasadena. And my daughter was really interested in going to see that, and so I got us tickets, and we decided to go up there. And then I was like, oh my gosh, we have to drive back up to Napa afterwards, right? And I don't want to drive back to San Diego after the America's Got Talent show, sitting in LA traffic to get through, and then back up, the next day, adding a total of probably at least 5 hours onto our trip. It didn't sound like fun. So I just added an Airbnb in Pasadena, and we stayed in the Chinatown Airbnb. And I watched an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, which is just hilarious. I don't know. I don't know if it's comically supposed to be that bad, but it's great. And Tobey Maguire was in it and everything. And so I asked my son, I was like, hey, get out of your Switch. Do you know who that is? He's like, yeah, that's yeah, oh God, now I'm blanking on the name of the new Spider-Man, Tom Holland. That's Tom Holland, and I'm like, okay, close. You're very close. He obviously knew who it was, but I had to tell him his name. So we had a really great trip. I really enjoyed it. Oh yeah, I took him to the Santa Monica Pier, and we went to the beach there as well. It was a really, really fun trip. So I'm glad to be back home now. Been packing boxes, getting ready for my move into my new home, which is coming in. Well, I should be getting the keys any day. And they're going to do a half a move in a couple weeks. And so I'm working things out to the garage, getting rid of stuff where I can, and just moving as much as I can out of the house to lessen the full move, which is coming in mid-May. Before the end of the month. Good news also, talking about the end of May, Concert Pipeline is lined up to cover Bottle Rock 2021 Festival, which is really, really exciting. So we're going to be doing interviews with bands leading up to the Bottle Rock Festival. I think it's pretty safe to say right now that we'll have an interview with Atlas Genius, which is fun. I interviewed them years ago, and it'll be great to catch up with those gents from their home in Australia, and a handful of other bands as well, maybe a couple at the actual event at the festival, and we'll throw some live coverage out during the event. Metallica's playing, which is great. I didn't know if I'd be seeing them again. It's just one of those bands that like I've seen them a handful of times and love it, and they put on a freaking killer show, but didn't know if I'd be seeing them again, but I definitely will at Bottle Rock, as well as Bleachers, another one of my favorite bands. So it'll be great to see them live again. So many great bands, and just get to hang around the festival and have a good time, and throw a lot of content out there, throw some interviews out as well, and get to be kind of like my last hurrah in Napa before I move out of town. So My house will be completely empty then, so I'll be sleeping on an air mattress in an empty house, which is pretty exciting. I can't wait. So, all right, I've babbled enough. I think we should bring in our guest here again. I check out Lance Keltner's new album. Um, it's coming out in June. Let's get into it with Lance here. You have a new album coming out. We'll talk about that, of course. But I like kind of going in a chronological sense when we can, a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why don't you tell me a little bit about what music you listened to as a kid? What were your parents playing in the house when you were growing up?
Well, yeah. When I was a little boy, my folks listened to like Tom Jones and Dean Martin and that sort of thing, right? So I grew up listening to these sort of crooner guys, and I don't know how much that affected me, but as soon as I could, I got a Badfinger single. I got Baby Blue,
Okay.
and I heard it on the radio and wanted it, so my parents got me that single. And then for some reason, I was very attracted to Deep Purple Machine Head. They got me that record, and that really, my dad couldn't figure that one out at all. And then after that, uh, I was influenced a lot by a local band that was signed to Capricorn Records when I was a kid in Lawton, Oklahoma. My dad was in the Army, so we traveled a lot. And in Lawton, these guys were amazing. They were called Two Guns, and they were sort of like a cross between early ZZ Top and the Allman Brothers. They were really amazing players. And so luckily the guy came over who was sort of my mentor from that band, and I revered them. I mean, he kind of looked like Dwayne Allman, and he walked into my house with his cowboy hat on and, let me see your record collection. And he went, I'm taking Kiss. I took all the crap and he goes, here's Cream Disraeli Gears, Hendrix Are You Experienced, and a John Lee Hooker album. If you want this crap back later on, let me know. And
You
so,
never asked for it back.
no, as a young person, and taking nothing away from Kiss or any of those bands like that, but as a young person, it was a big deal for me because these guys really turned me on to stuff that I would have never, ever been turned on to at my age, So
Yeah.
it helped me quite a bit. I started playing slide guitar. And by the time I was 12, I was playing in clubs around Lawton, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so 12, 13, 14, 15, I was playing in bars.
Wow. And who gave you
And
your first guitar?
my dad, it's a weird story. We were in Atlanta, Georgia. We hadn't moved to Oklahoma yet. We were at Fort McPherson, Georgia. And I had a horrible fever at 10 years old and I almost died. And up until that point, to be very honest with you, I wanted to be an airborne ranger. My dad was Army CID. He had trained, paratroopers and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And I used to love their T-shirts because on the front it had their insignia, and on the back it said, I want to visit far off foreign lands, meet interesting new people, and kill them. And I thought,
Wow.
as a
Okay.
boy, I thought, that's the coolest thing ever. Well, so when I was 10, I had this fever. I nearly died. And they gave me stuff to break the fever, and I literally tripped my brains out. And from this medicine and from the fever. And in this crazy delusional state I was in when I was a little boy, I saw myself playing electric guitar. I had no interest in music until then. I came out of this thing and my dad said, I'm so glad you're not dead. Is there anything we can get you? And I said, I'd like to have a guitar. And they got me a guitar, and it just kind of started and became sort of the focal point of my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it goes kind of against the chronological piece, but it feels like there's a tie-in between, the near-death illness, that kind of happened when you're 10 and last year, right? Like, so, and for those that obviously aren't aware, you had a horrible battle with COVID, and,
Yeah.
right after your birthday. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
been
Tell
like
me.
a year and I guess now it's been about a year and almost a year and a half ago. It was January, 2 years ago, basically. And I had moved to New Mexico, and I drove back to Austin to get some things, and was very dehydrated and sick on the way. So I went to a friend of mine's emergency room. They have a freestanding ER. I said, "Well, you've got COVID," and they said, "Go back to your place in Austin, stay on an oxygen meter. If your oxygen goes below 90, please come back and see us." So the
Wow.
next day, I'm on the couch at about 10 o'clock at night and have horrible insomnia. You know, some people with COVID, they lose taste and smell and sleep all the time. I had my taste and smell, but couldn't sleep at all. And so I looked at the oxygen meter at about, that evening, and it was like 74.
Wow.
And they said that later on, one of the nurses who was a friend of mine said, dead bodies show 70. That's how close you were to dead, And so I drove myself back to the ER. They immediately hospitalized me, and I was in the hospital for 10 days.
Yeah.
And 5 days in, I had this otherworldly, crazy experience. I know other people have had this kind of thing happen, these sort of near-death experiences, and I was in really bad shape. And because I wouldn't let them intubate me and put me in a coma, they made me sign a do not resuscitate order. So they were barely paying attention to me. If I died, I'd just die, and they would have rolled me out of there, I guess. And
Wow.
my whole room, filled with light from everywhere. And a very clear voice said to me, "You're not going to die here." And I thought, well, that's nice. And then it said, "Make music your full priority, your priority again, and everything will work itself out." And at the time, my band and I, we're all in either almost 60 or a little over 60. We thought, well, we'll never get a real record deal again. I mean, we like to play, and we've done a lot of stuff in the past, but we're probably at the end of this unless something weird and then magical happens. So it also told me never touch alcohol again. While I wasn't an alcoholic, I was a Texan, and
Yeah.
and we went. Most of us that I hung out with drank every day. We didn't drink excessively, but we drank every day. So it said, this voice said, don't touch alcohol ever again. I'm like, well, okay. So I start recovering like magically, like day 6, day 7, I'm getting better. My oxygen levels are coming up. And about day 8, Brian Brickerhoff called me, who used to run BMG Music Publishing, and was an executive at Disney. And he said, "I've got this label. Would you like to do an album?" And I
Did you
said,
know you were
"No."
in the hospital?
He didn't at the time. And I
Okay.
told him, I'm in the hospital right now. I'm got COVID really badly. And he said, "Wow, well, we can put this off, but I'd really like to do it." And I said, "Now, is this a record deal, or is this a new record deal where I pay for everything and you take the money if we make any?" And he goes, "No, no, record deal. We're paying for all of it. We're paying the band." And I went, "Wow, okay." I could still barely talk at the time. And he said, "Just
Yeah.
take as long as you need before you're ready to go to the studio, and then we'll do this thing." So 2 months I was on oxygen. And I finally
Wow.
just honestly had to say, I'm off of this. I can't do this anymore. I got to go do an album. So I literally drove from Santa Fe to Austin with an oxygen bottle in front of the truck just in case. Rolled
Yeah.
it into the studio, didn't use it, and honestly did the best vocal performances I've ever done on this record, and it worked out great. And I've just been really thankful that we had an opportunity to do it. It's been a great experience.
Yeah. And so before the COVID thing, how long had it been since you'd picked up a guitar? Had you been playing still?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always played
Yeah.
guitar. I
Okay.
always wrote, but we hadn't done a proper album in years. I used to tour Europe twice a year. We were always out doing shows, and we had kind of gotten to the point, especially because of COVID, we just my whole crew had basically gone, we're gonna not do anything for a while. And so I called the guys, some of which had been with me literally since 1985,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, you want to get the band together and do a record?" And they were like, "Now, is this a real record, or is this where we pay for everything?" I said, "No, no, it's a real record." And so I got my crew together, and Brian wanted us to revisit some of my older tunes and do new versions of them, and then do some new songs, basically just to make sure we had control of our mechanical royalties. I mean, going forward, we'll do all new material on the next album, but this one had some revisited things from all the way back when I was on ATCO in the early 90s, all the way forward, because after ATCO, after we lost our ATCO deal, we went to Europe and worked in Europe for years on a couple different labels in Europe. So I had mechanical royalties scattered all over with all these different small labels and ATCO and all this stuff. So it was kind of a thing where Brian, having been a publishing executive, went, let's clean this up. Let's get all these songs back. We'll do great versions of them. We'll get this out there. So, we went in the studio. I think we recorded 15 songs and we put there'll be 9 or 10 on the full length record.
Yeah. And so you've had two really major kind of life points where, a near death experience, led to your, moving forward with music in a sense, right? And did you reflect on that, while you were in the hospital at all, kind of after you get the call from Brian?
I did. I mean, obviously, in today's climate in the music industry, for people who do blues rock, I was like, first of all, I was like going, when this magical voice said, make music your priority again and everything will work itself out, I was thinking, well, music's always been a priority, but I haven't done anything serious, as far as touring and stuff in a long time. And then to have Brian call out of the blue and just offer to sign the band and do a record with us, I was like, okay, I'm following whatever this thing says from now on, And and of course, I thought back to being 10 years old and going, wow, I almost died when I first got a guitar. And here I am having this experience. It was a real eye opener. And the funny thing is, I don't know if you drink, but a lot of people that drink casually even go,
yeah,
I don't want to go a day without having a drink, or every other day, or whatever it is, right? And it was odd. For me, it was literally, I can't take any credit because it was like an off switch. So the minute that happened, I never even thought about it again.
It just was comfortable and you were okay moving forward with that.
Yeah, I wasn't. I'm never sitting around going, "Gosh, sure would like to go have a margarita." I'm just. It doesn't even occur to me now, which is
even when you're at shows, playing shows, and they give you the drink tickets, and no, you're good. Yeah.
I just give them away.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting how that worked.
Yeah. So that's a great big change. And so Austin has been such a big part of your life. You moved there when you were 19. Have you lived there the whole time, or I think you've had a couple of moves since then, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, in the mid '80s, I had an opportunity to go to New York, and I was in New York for about a year, and met some of the players that really have worked with me or been influential in my work for my whole life. I worked with Carmine Rojas on bass, who played with Bowie and later with Rod Stewart and LaBelle and all these folks. And then David Prater played drums for me in New York, and he ended up being the producer that did the Grammy Award winning record for Dream Theater. And he's a record producer now. And these guys were really instrumental in getting me to the next level. And, Brendan Burke was my manager, who had managed Billy Idol. And so, this New York thing was kind of a magical experience, because I went up there with a friend and then I got a call from Prater, who I didn't know, and said, would you like to do a jam thing? And I said, sure. And we were jamming, and Brendan Burke walked in and went, are you guys a band? And Carmine knew who he was, and he grabbed me by the arm and went, yes, we are. And he said, and he moved me into an apartment in New York, and I stayed there for a year, and that led to us getting our major label deal.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And so tell me about the environment in Austin itself. I mean, Austin has such great festivals: South by Southwest, Austin City Limits, Fun Fest. You can name, a dozen of them, I'm sure. But like, what has that environment done for your band? And tell me about the experience being a part of that.
Well, I gotta say, in the '80s, it was crazy, because my music was harder edged in the '80s for a while. But you could walk into any club anywhere in this town back then and see amazing talent. Like, I used to go see Stevie Ray Vaughan play at Steamboat in front of 20 people, before Stevie took off. And, and obviously I came up around Charlie Sexton and Will Sexton, and you'd go see Joe Ely anywhere. And, Eric Johnson is a dear friend of mine. So all of these folks were around. And what happened was kind of interesting. Is like in the early '90s, it was almost like what happened to Seattle all of us got signed. I mean, everybody got signed. And it was this weird thing where there was this running joke, like somebody go, oh, I've got a major label record deal. And God, my mom's got a record deal. Everybody had a record deal. And it was a small town, right? I mean, back then, when the kids went away for college in the summer, it was a ghost town. I mean, it was small here then. And, you know, of course, now it's like Los Angeles, basically, without a beach. You know,
Yeah.
it's out of control. The city council people here and the mayor are a bunch of wackos that basically have ruined the town. And it's, you know, they didn't do anything about infrastructure, but they keep raising taxes. So you have like horrible traffic. You know, the scene is still better than most places, but it's a different thing that I grew up in. So I thank Austin for everything Austin did for me from a growth standpoint and from, you know, just getting stuff out. But there was never really any music business here. South by was a thing, but it honestly, most of the people I know never got record deals from South by Southwest. But it was like just a great melting pot of musicians here and a great starting point for most of us, you know. And I just got to the point that I'm almost 60 years old now. I live in New Mexico, kind of up in the mountains, and I'm just like, I like it that I live in a town that has 5,000 people, and that's good. You know, I come back here to work. I'm here right now to do some work with the band, and we just did videotaped a live acoustic show. But when I'm not having to do things with the band or getting ready to tour, I'm up in New Mexico now. This guy, I just like the quiet, you know, and the mountains and the weather.
Yeah. No, that's obviously a lot more calm, peaceful, and where, you know, where you want to be.
Sure.
I will say I've been to Austin a couple of times, and there's this great place called Gordos. Okay, you're familiar. It's great because you have a burger, but the buns are donuts, and you got some guacamole on there. You got everything. It's just bacon. You know, it's a great creation that, you know, you can't get here, you know, anywhere I've been to in California.
A donut burger. Yeah, well, and then
Yes.
right across the street, if you've never been, next time you're here, you got to go to Matt's El Rancho. It's a legendary place. Matt's.
Okay.
Matt's has been in business for, gosh, like 70 years. And I grew up here around Matt Martinez, who owned the restaurant. And, you know, it's just a legendary place. It's like everybody goes to Matt's El Rancho. And in the old days, in the 80s, Matt would even put my band and all of our friends every Friday or Saturday night. When we came in, he'd put us in this back room away from the civilized people, and we'd tear the place up. And then at the end of the night, he'd come in and we'd all stand on our chairs with our last drink and sing the Love Boat song. You know, but it's a place that if you go to school here, all the college kids, they go to Matt's, and Matt's is gigantic, and it's a thing. So if you come back, got to try Matt's El Rancho.
Okay, definitely. When I go to Gordos, I'll cross the street.
There you go.
If I'm going to Matt's, I'm going to Gordos. I'll just say so.
There you
go. But yeah, so tell me about, I mean, we're talking about the 80s, and you mentioned that some of your band members have been with you since like it's 85. Tell me about that dynamic and being able to sustain, you know, a band for that long, you know, and you know, I guess obviously they're more than friends or family, right? So.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like in my case, my father was the youngest in his family by about 16 years. Mm-hmm. So even my cousins are all dead. I mean, I'm like the last person in my family, and I'm an only child. Wow. So my band are my family. And you know, Jeff Howard, that played on the album, and I started working together in like 1985, 86, and then Mike Moyer, the bass player, came in about 88. And then we got the deal on Atco East West, and Cole Hansen, the other guitar player, had been in this other band who had a record deal, and somehow or another it didn't work out for him. And my drummer at the time, Jeff, wasn't in the band right then. This other fellow came in and said, "Hey, Cole Hansen's available. He's not going to do this other thing." And we were finishing our Atco record. We're going to go on tour. And I just picked up the phone and said, "Hey, you want to be in a band?" And he was like, "Okay." And then Cole and I, he's the new guy, and he's been with me since 1991. And so
wow,
it is a family, you know, it's a family dynamic. And the fun thing about it is Mike and Cole and I sing really great together, and we've been harmonizing and stuff for, you know, decades. So we put something together, it works pretty fast, and the guys are just, you know, 100% on it, and you know, they're always there for me. You know.
Yeah. And you mentioned Europe earlier as well. I know you have a big presence in Europe.
Yeah.
Tell me about the atmosphere in Europe and being able to play shows across the pond.
Oh man, I tell you, the first time we went to Germany, we were in shock because, you know, back then, I mean, Austin, most places, not, you know, not just Austin, but you know, you'd go into a bar, you'd be lucky if they give you free water. You know, the dressing room smelled like pee, you know. And first time we went to Germany, it's like we were in a club gig and there was catering and
Wow.
local techs that helped us put all the gear on stage and set everything up. And the promoter took us to a nice dinner in addition to all the great food that was in the dressing room. And they had as many drinks as anybody could consume for free. And afterwards, they helped you load your gear back up. And the sound man was professional and not drunk or on drugs. It was like, oh my God, this is a whole other planet, you know? And so we just fell in love with the whole thing in Germany. So mainly our audience in Europe is in Germany, Holland, and Belgium. That's kind of where we just sort of took off, right? And this time when we go back in October, I think we're going to play in Norway as well and a few other places. But Germany, Holland, and Belgium has been kind of the stronghold. And the fans there are amazing because they will learn all of your songs. They know everything about, I mean, and the fun thing is, especially the older blues guy, the old German blues guy fans they'll come up and tell you your life story.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll go, and then when you were 12, you play the bass in Oklahoma and you play with the band Two Guns. I have the album, you know, that they learn everything, right? And it's not just about me, it's about anybody that they're into. They really are kind of super fans and they're really supportive of the people they care about. So I love it. And, you know, hopefully we're not going to have a world war or another exciting bioweapon release and we can go over there and work, you know. I'm excited to go and we're hoping for October.
Yeah. And in Norway, you're playing with the Backstreet Girls. I heard you talk about that group a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me, tell me about that because you produced their album. Is that right?
No, I wrote one of their hit songs.
Oh, you wrote that. Okay.
What happened was in the 80s, I was drawing really big at this place called the Back Room in Austin. It was sort of, and none of us were in the Chronicle Love A-Team group because we weren't writing ballads and stuff. We were a rock band, you know, and so we were sort of on the fringe, you know. We played at this place called the Back Room. It was mainly full of, you know, bikers, drunk strippers, and rock fans. That was where we played. So
Yeah.
the Backstreet Girls came over here to do an album. We'd never met them before. And my manager at the time, Kevin Womack, who's still a dear friend of mine, he managed Los Lonely Boys and a bunch of other folks. Kevin said, hey, these guys are here, and I know you write good English rock lyrics. Would you mind getting together with them and helping them out? And I was like, no. And I don't know if you've heard the Backstreet Girls, but they're kind of like, they're amazing live. It's kind of like going to see early AC/DC meets the Ramones.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they're kind of like punk AC/DC. And
Yeah.
they're so good. Oh my God. No, when they were around for the summer that time, no one at the Back Room wanted them to open for them because they would wear the crowd out and then you'd have to come out and try to do your set. And they were that good. They were crazy good. And so they had a title. Bjorn, the singer, said, I want to do a song called Rattlesnake Charlie. And I went, okay. So I wrote all the lyrics for Rattlesnake Charlie. And we're sitting there kind of kicking ideas around. And it was so funny and cool because Petter, the guitar player, they pronounce Peter Petter, I guess, in Norway. Petter is sitting there, and Petter looks like Mick Jagger with black hair. And he didn't say much. He would just kind of go, cool, or 11.
Yeah.
And so he gets to go to the bathroom, and I go, hey, Bjorn, Petter doesn't speak very much English, does he? And he goes, oh, no, you don't understand. He's too drunk to talk. He speaks fine English. So this was a band these guys would party their brains out. It was unbelievable. But I wrote Rattlesnake Charlie for them, and that was a hit for them in Norway. And we've all remained friends ever since. And so I kind of reached out to them and said, hey, if we're around in October, and they were like, you can open any show you want for us in October. Just let us know. So we've not ever been to Norway. So I thought maybe at the end of our dates in Germany, we might pop up to Norway and do a few dates with the Backstreet Girls.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. So tell me a little bit about your approach when you write for another group versus when you're writing your own music.
Well, I kind of write to the song, to the music, because they came with a track.
Mhm.
And I just what is Rattlesnake Charlie? Well, Rattlesnake Charlie's this biker kid, and you just kind of think of a story that fits the image of the group and the singer's kind of vernacular and just go for it. It's like, and the crazy thing is I've done in my life, I did stuff with them, but I've also was the guitar player in a Captain Crunch commercial, and I was the guitar player on all the big Buck Hunter video games early on. And, and I've written for other people too, but yeah, when you're writing for other people, it's a less personal thing. You're trying to get yourself in the head of somebody else and what you think they would want, and then to see if
Yeah.
that works out. But with me, the best songs that we've ever written are songs that kind of wrote themselves. It's hard to even take credit for them. I just go, there it is, and I didn't do that. So you have to think about it a bit more when you're working with other people.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Joe Satriani. You've opened for him?
I did. Yeah, Joe's a sweetheart. We opened for him at the
Yeah.
Austin Opera House. But back in the 80s, here in Austin, there was a promoter named Jim Ramsey. And he knew that my band would draw an extra few hundred people to any of these other shows. So a lot of times he would have us open. So we opened for, everybody. We opened for Joe Satriani. We opened for Alcatraz when Yngwie Malmsteen was with him. We opened for Eric Johnson a lot. We opened for The Outfield. Remember that band?
No, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, they're a British pop band. We opened for all kinds of bands. I mean, it's like we did a bunch of different shows over the years, and we were kind of the opening act of choice for most of the harder rock bands that would come through. So
Yeah.
we did a lot of big shows like that. And
Yeah.
Satriani was a sweetheart, very nice person.
Oh, he's amazing. I've met him a couple of times. I told him it was like he has magic coming from his fingertips. Just the way he plays guitar is incredible, and it's unlike anything I've heard. So
Yeah, and he's, what I like about what he does is that he uses his guitar as his voice, since he isn't a singer. And he writes extremely memorable melodies, which I think that's the key right there. I mean, you look at somebody like Joe, and then even more incredible for me anyway is, my favorite guitar player in the world is Jeff Beck. And Jeff tells freaking emotional stories with single note guitar lines. I mean, he's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so, I love that kind of stuff. I did an instrumental album that I self-released a few years ago called Mystic Redneck, and people were going, the arrangements are crazy on these songs. How did you guys do these arrangements? I said, they're not songs, they're jams. We just set up and played, and nobody knew what anybody else was going to do. And we took the best of it and released it. But it was a cool group. It was Patterson Barrett, who played keyboards with just about everybody in Austin, and Tommy Taylor from Eric Johnson's band on drums, and Mark Epstein on bass, who played with Johnny Winter. And then we had this amazing guy who passed away, who played on some of it, named Frosty Smith. And Frosty was one of the most amazing drummers I've ever been around in my whole life. He played with all kinds of people in the 60s in San Francisco. He was that guy. And so by the time he even played with me, he was probably 75 and just one of the most amazing players ever. But, it's the instrumental thing's a whole other world, as you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because so many bands have vocals to take precedence and be the stage of the music. But when you don't have that, you're paying attention to the music and the feel and everything, and you're being swept away by that, and it's even that much more important, right? Can't cover it up. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the new album. I got a chance to listen to it. I dig it. And you said you revisited some other songs from your past. Just with those songs that you revisited, going back to them, like what was your approach to bringing a new life to them? Was it natural, and did it take you back to a certain spot in your music career?
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the songs like Anadarko was one of those songs that wrote itself while I was in New Jersey doing my first album. And I was just in the hotel room and man, it just came out, and to be able to redo that and do more of a rootsier, more updated version of that song was really great for myself and the band. And like Train of Misery was one that we did that we used to do in the early 90s, and it was on a European release but never released in the States. And that song meant a lot to me. And then How Long was a song that Cole and I wrote together that we never released on an album. And the interesting thing about How Long is that it's very timely now. And so I looked back at that song and I said, we need to recut that because we never released it. It's something that should be out there. And it's a song about, human rights, basically, and how jacked up the world is right now as far as politics and just the way people are treating each other, and trying to get that out there was a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, and you have Train of Misery. It's about a homeless person sitting on a railroad track in Austin, right? Is this something? It's something you saw, you witnessed, and you just kind of you
Yeah,
felt this, this
yeah.
song come out of it.
The first album came out on Atco, and rather than being smart and taking the little bit of money I had and buying a house, I moved the band into this place called the Rail Yard, which was the only luxury downtown apartment complex where we could walk to rehearsal, where we had a rehearsal place downtown, and walk to all the bars and restaurants downtown. So we were like, wow, we're urbanites. It's like Austin didn't have any of that, right? And then
Yeah,
behind there was a railroad track and a loading dock, and there was a guy that lived on a couch back there. And Cole and I would watch him all the time. We'd be in the apartment. He'd read the paper. He was talking to himself and kind of crying and hitting himself in the head and stuff. And I was like, what is that guy's story? And we actually sat down and wrote Train of Misery about this man. And, it was, an interesting time for all of us because we were writing like crazy. And that guy was certainly an influence on that tune.
yeah, for sure. So tell me about Smartbell. I don't know a lot about amps to be fair, but tell me. I mean, obviously that's a passion for you, and tell me how that came about.
Well, okay. Some years ago, my dear friend Cliff Coltrari, that used to have Relativity Records, he was the guy that discovered Joe Satriani. Cliff had a music online music store called Destroy All Guitars, and he was doing really well. And he said, "Hey, I have an idea. Why don't you go on YouTube and demo some of this high-end gear?" And started doing it. And the more I did it, the more I played all the stuff that was out there, the more I realized that I had ideas for my own gear. And I owned a Dumble amp, which was one of the most rare amps in the world in the 80s. And the one I owned, I didn't like. I wished I'd kept it because now you can sell them for like $250,000 for an amp. I bought it for $5,000. I sold it for 10 grand. I thought, hey, I made out.
At least you made money off of it, right?
But the Dumble amps that I liked were the early 70s ones, and they were very hard to come by. Like my archetypal slides, pinnacle of everything slide tone was David Lindley on Running on Empty on that song he did with Jackson Brown. That slide tone was like, that is the freaking slide tone. Well, what that was, it was an early 70s Dumble. And it was, the 80s Dumbles were more like blackface Fender amps. The 70s were more like old school tweed Fender amps. So I'm going to design my own thing. So I went with an amp designer. We designed like what was kind of a takeoff on an early 70s Dumble. And it got that tone I wanted. And initially we just did it for me. And I did a demo of it and everybody went, well, I want one. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Well, okay. And so we started building them and formed a little company. And how we named it is I was walking around the park one morning and I knew it kind of sounded like a dumble. And I was like, dumbbell, Smartbell, not dumbbell, Smartbell. And so we called it Smartbell. And the girl that's on the logo was a friend of mine that worked at Snooze Restaurant in South Lamar. Her name's Kari. And I said, hey, Kari, you want to be the girl in our logo? And she goes, sure. We just took a picture of her. There she is. Boom. And we based it on like the old 1940s bombers. You know, they'd always do pinup girls on the sides of those.
Yeah, yeah.
We want it to be tastefully done. It's not like a sexist looking thing. I mean, she's fully dressed and everything, but it was like a 1940s sort of pinup girl thing. And we named the two first amps after planes. So the P-38 after a fighter, the P-51 after a fighter, and then we have a solid state version of the amp, which sounds unbelievable. It's called an SR-71 because that's a stealth plane. Yeah. And so we have a fuzz pedal that we have out, and we're releasing some new products this year. We were kind of in a slump during COVID, like a lot of people, but we're coming back now.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things as we wind down. Tell me a little bit about Simranking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So that was a typical thing where, and I know it's happened to so many people. I was at my biggest in Europe. Okay. We were like playing headlining outdoor festivals, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people. We played the Biesenthal Motorcycle Festival. And I walked off the stage and was backstage and I went, you know, it's like all artists. Oh, how can I screw this up? I want to go do something completely different. So I put my band on hiatus and I got a metal body resonator guitar and I started writing some resonator songs. And I called Carmine Rojas and said, hey, Carmine, what do you think about doing this? And he said, like what? I said, like resonator Delta music meets world music. And he goes, I'm in. So we got Tal Bergman, who's this amazing drummer out of LA, and Carmine and a session keyboard player, and Bernard Fowler that sings with the Rolling Stones did all the backing vocals. And we recorded this record, and I even put the album cover as a tattoo on my arm. I was like, this is my thing. I was like going, I feel like Sting or something. This is so cool. And the European press and fans went, what in the hell is this crap?
You committed. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, because you know the press over there would say like we were kind of like, what if the Black Crowes were from Texas? You know, very back then, sort of Stonesy rock and roll. And I come out with this record that hardly has any electric guitar on it, and it's got tablas and all that. Yeah, and the fan base just didn't accept it at all. But I love the music, and I still do. We recut one of the tunes. We recut My Darkest Day on this record, which was a single.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
But we did it, you know, more like this band would do it. But,
sure.
But yeah, I love doing the album. It's just nobody else liked it.
Yeah.
So I was like, they're like, just shut up and plug into a loud amp. Okay, thanks. You know, so that was kind of where that went.
Cool experience, still, huh?
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, and you're working on writing a book?
Yeah, I'm writing a book right now about my adventures. Having been a sideman for some people over the years, as well as a touring person on my own with my record, I got to meet a lot of people and a lot of really wild, interesting experiences, you know. And so I'm writing a book right now to kind of let people know, other musicians, what it's like to be in the area that I've been in, right? And so the book is called Trailer Parks and Learjets, the story of a mid-level rock musician. And, you know, and there's crazy stories. Like one night I was in Chicago with the singer for the Animals, Eric Burden, and some people. And my other friend, Kent Dykes from Omar and the Howlers from Austin, happened to be playing that night in Chicago. And he's a huge fan of the Animals and had cut We Gotta Get Out of This Place by the Animals on his new album. I was able to drag the singer for the Animals, right up to the front of the gig and go, Omar, look. And he's like, oh my God, freaked out, right? And we had a picture of Eric Burden sitting on Omar's lap, giving him a kiss on the cheek, and then went out and immediately wrecked a car and left it on the side of the road, went to champagne brunch. But, you know, there's a lot of fun rock and roll stories in the book.
Yeah, so you got a title for it, so that means it's got to be near completion, or like what is?
Halfway. It's about halfway. I've got about 10 more chapters to go, and I'm done.
Yeah, and so how are you revisiting these stories? Like, I mean, how do you remember everything that when you live a life like this? I mean, to go back and say and isolate it down to these pinpoint stories that you want to share in the book.
I am cursed with a photographic memory. I remember every single thing that's happened to me since I was about 10.
Wow.
And I remember it in detail. And sometimes it's a curse. But yeah, I mean, it's like all these stories, I've just remembered them, and it's really easy just to sit down and write them. And it's, I guess when I say chapters, it's less about chapters and more about individual stories. It's just sort of like the book starts when I'm 10 years old and I nearly die of a fever and ask for a guitar. And it ends up, you know, now basically it's like where we're at right now. So there's the chapters are relatively short. It's more like little short stories that all go together to make one big story. You know,
This interview is the end of the book, or you know?
Yeah, and then I was interviewed. The end. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's awesome. And so, so you have the Europe tour. I know you want to tour the States. Do you have anything lined up for here? I heard when East Coast.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get to go do a run up the East Coast and the West Coast, and we'd love to play a lot more of the U.S. because honestly, since the ATCO record, we've mainly been in Europe. You know, we would go to Europe twice a year and stay a couple months a year, and then that would be our tour base. You know, and so we haven't played enough in the States, and I'm looking. Excuse me, I'm looking whether we do it as a full band or the stripped down acoustic thing to go do some opening slots for folks, you know, because you want to get out in front of people in this country that draw a few thousand people a night.
Yeah.
And, you know, so anybody listening, we would be happy to go out and open your tour for you for a few weeks or a month, you know, it'd be nice, you know. But I look at some of the other rock bands that have come out lately that I really enjoy, you know, like I'm really encouraged by the fact that, you know, that there's some younger or even guys that are closer to our age, but newer rock bands that have come out and kind of made an impact, like Rival Sons. I'm a fan of
Yeah.
Rival Sons. I'm still kind of freaked out a little bit about the little band that kind of sounds like a metrosexual Led Zeppelin. You know, I'm talking about Greta Van Fleet.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah. They're a little.
that's just Zeppelin. It's basically Zeppelin songs with different words. You know, it's like, I mean, great, good on them, and I'm glad kids are loving them. I'm into it. But I really like Rival Sons and you know, Mudhoney. There's a few other bands out there that are really interesting to me, and so it's kind of cool that there's a little bit of a resurgence of the kind of rock and roll that I like, you know, that I play.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So last question for you, Lance. What's a memorable live show experience that you had? Like something that really stuck with you is like, either this was a great show or this was a colossal failure for this reason, you know, something that really stuck out from one of your shows.
Well, there's two, and one of them's in Holland and one of them's in Germany. The funny one is they set up a press show for us at this club in Holland, and all the press was going to be there. And we had an intro tape, you know, a real pro set. And I went, I have to use the restroom. I'll be right back. And I run to the back of the club, go into this tiny little restroom like they have in Europe, lock the door, use the restroom, turn around, the lock turns and will not open. And it was like the movie Spinal Tap. The intro tape plays, I don't show up, the band's just kind of up there, people are kind of, and then you hear all the crowd noise, and I'm kind of going, and somebody comes up and he goes, opens the door. I'm like, I'm stuck. The door will not open. My road manager's back there with a crowbar pulling the door off the hinges to get me out. And by that time, there was a crowd of people standing around, and I like had to come out of the men's room, you know, ta-da, you know. And for my next trick, But I guess the most memorable show for me was our agent didn't tell us how amazing it was going to be, but we played the Biesenthal Motorcycle Festival in Berlin some years ago,
Yeah.
and we headlined. And when we went on stage, there were 50,000 people there, and many of them knew the sing along parts on the songs.
Wow.
And that was probably the coolest thing that has ever happened to me as a solo artist ever. Is to have that kind of reception from a crowd that big. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. What a cool experience. And I'm sure it'll be in your book as well, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. Well, Lance, I want to thank you for taking the time today. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Dig the new album. I'm sure you're excited for that to come out here in June, right?
Yeah, well, and hey, thank you for your time, and thanks for offering to do the interview. It's very kind of you to do.
That was the interview with Lance Keltner here on Concert Pipeline. And that takes us to the final segment on the program, the music news. I have a couple of stories about what's going on in the music world. It's actually a big news week because the first weekend of Coachella just happened. So we'll get to some of that. But before we do, let's hit some other stories about what's going on. Snoop Dogg explained why he removed Death Row catalog from streaming platforms. He says the music in the meantime will live in the metaverse. All right. So Death Row Records, which was founded in 1991 by Suge Knight, Dr. Dre, and Michael Harry-O Harris. Snoop was one of the three key artists responsible for the success of the legendary West Coast rap label alongside Dr. Dre and Tupac. On the latest episode of Drink Champs with co-host DJ EFN and NORE, Snoop discussed his decision to move Death Row catalog. First thing I did was snatch all the music off the platforms traditionally known to people because those platforms don't pay, Snoop said. And those platforms get millions and millions of streams and nobody gets paid other than the record labels. So what I wanted to do is snatch my music off, create a platform similar to Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu. It'll be a Death Row app, and the music in the meantime will live in the metaverse. That's kind of his plan, is to sync all of that music to this new app, which is going to be coming out. I don't know how fans will respond to that, because they don't go to one app. They don't go to fans don't want to go to 100 different apps to get their music, right? They want to get it all in one place, whether that be Apple Music or Spotify or Amazon, or what have you. I guess we'll see what happens there in the future. But if you want that music, go to the metaverse for now. Okay. John Lydon on his Sex Pistols bandmates biopic. None of these fucks would have a career, but for me, they can all fuck off. Yeah, John Lydon has hit out against his former Sex Pistols bandmates in the new Danny Boyle directed biop series, calling them Deadwood and questioning their talents. Pistol, which is due to premiere on Hulu and Disney Plus, where Hulu isn't available, on May 31st, is based off founding member Steve Jones's, the other Steve Jones, not me, memoir, Lonely Boy, Tales from a Sex Pistol. The 6-episode series is created and written by Craig Pierce. And now in an interview with The Sun, the Public Image Limited frontman took aim at Jones and drummer Paul Cook for allegedly removing him from the production process. Cutting me out is a shockingly stupid move, he said. It's so ridiculous, so preposterous. They can all fuck off. I supported them for years and years and years, knowing they were deadwood. He said, none of these fucks would have a career, but for me, they did nothing before. They've done nothing since. Oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty heavy. I do know Steve Jones has a radio show called Jonesy's Jukebox. Although I always wanted to interview Steve Jones, just for getting into that metaverse sort of situation, as we were talking about metaverses, right? It would be cool to interview him at some point. And I tried on what I believe was their last tour, but I didn't get an interview, so didn't happen. Yeah. So he's clearly not happy with the biopic. Okay. So a couple more stories again about stuff that's going on in music news. Bob Dylan, he has announced new 2022 North American tour dates, which I think if my co-host Jens were here, he would be super excited about. And their West Coast dates also, which means he's playing 3 nights at the Fox Theater in Oakland in June, June 9th, 10th, and 11th. And so no word on when those tickets will go on sale that I can see, but they're going to be here before you know it. So I'm sure the tickets will be on sale and sell out very quickly for his West Coast dates. All right, so lots of stuff happened at Coachella. There's a lot of Coachella news. I'm going to keep it pretty thin though, and talk about Arcade Fire, which is probably my favorite band that played Coachella. They had a surprise set at Coachella, and also they had a couple of times where they had to pause their set during the performance. So the band was announced as a surprise addition to the lineup on Thursday, right before the festival started. Less than a minute into the set, frontman Win Butler stopped their new track, The Lightning One, after seeing a fan in the front of the pit who needed help. Butler then called for a medic as the crowd erupted in cheers. And later in the set, he acknowledged the moment and festival safety, telling the packed tent, if you see someone out of their mind on drugs, find a fucking doctor. The band took another pause during the set, which featured multiple previews from their yet-to-be-released 6th album, We. Looking forward to that, by the way. Love me some Arcade Fire. Before playing their new song, Unconditional I, Look Out Kid, Butler dedicated the track to his son. After beginning the first verse with the lyrics, Look out, kid, trust your heart, Butler stopped, took a moment to wipe his eyes, and stood back from the microphone. He then told the crowd, it's been a hard fucking year, before starting from the beginning again. And later in the set, the band acknowledged the difficult past 2 years of the pandemic again, this time with Win saying, we're in a time of incredible change, but you can't have it bring you fucking down. And he also talked about the band's history with the Coachella, and how the co-founder, Paul Tollett, personally invited them to the event this year before talking about the band's first time playing the festival. The first time we played here was in 2005 when we were children, he said, adding that they were not children anymore. I think that I first saw Arcade Fire in 2004, which would make them even younger children at that point. It was an incredible performance, the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. And it packed. I mean, it was full, sold out, and their energy blew the roof off the stage. I mean, you could tell that they were going to be huge at that point, and I don't know that they could play a place that small again. They're incredible. It's been a while since I've seen Arcade Fire live. I've only seen them a couple of times, I think, but I hope to see them again sometime soon. So that's our story. Again, we're taking a pause from winding out the music news with stories about Dave Grohl, in respect to Taylor Hawkins and the Foo Fighters loss that's happened recently. So so we'll just wind out music news as it winds out. We have a bunch of interviews in the works right now against booking stuff tying to Bottle Rock, but I believe next week we'll have a band called Elder Island on the program. They're going to be playing at San Francisco's Regency Ballroom on May 30th. So we might be chatting with them ahead of that show. And then we'll get into some Bottle Rock stuff as we get into May and really a lot closer to the festival. So that is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. For all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. We'll catch you next time.